Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Holland Garage. In today's episode, we're going to be working on a 1950 Chevy 3100 5-window pickup truck. We're going to start off by modifying the front suspension. We're going to get it all cut up, set up, and sitting on airbags, so follow along. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jack the truck up. We're going to pull the tire off. We're going to start with the front suspension. We're going to modify, we're going to narrow the upper and lower control arms, put all new bushings in there, upper and lower ball joints, just make it to give it the best ride it can have. So the first thing we're going to have to do is jack up the truck and then get the front tire off. Apparently my little impact doesn't like doing that. Alright, let's get the tire off. A little extra safety, we can add the tire underneath the frame. Now the fun part. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the brake caliper. Get that up, out of the way, and then probably undo our shock. We're going to need to get in here, undo our lower ball joint, just loosen them up, don't take the nut completely off. Same way with the top, which is being hidden behind this brake hose. Loosen that up, but don't completely take it off. Make sure you take your cotter pins out first. Then we'll use a pickle fork. We'll knock them both loose and then get a jack up underneath the lower control arm before we take this top nut off. And then we'll just lower the jack down. That way it releases the spring and stops it from flying out from underneath the truck. Okay, so now we got the brake off. Got it hung up there, that way it's out of the way. And we got the tie rod taken off. Now we can turn the spindle so you can easily get to the upper and lower ball joint bolts. So we'll do that now. All right, once you got both the bottom and the upper ball joint bolt loose, you take your pickle fork, which this one I think is too small. Where'd my other pickle fork go? There's my other pickle fork. You take your pickle fork, you stick it in there. Now make sure that you leave your nuts, just like that. You leave your nuts on there so that way when it comes loose, it doesn't come flying off. About like that. Of course, my camera is following me and not following my actions, but this way. This way. This way. There you go. Good job. Once again, take your pickle fork, you stick it in there, you beat it until she pops loose. Then make sure that you have your jack underneath the lower ball joint. And then next, we'll undo the shock that I completely and totally forgot to take off. Okay, once you have the shock undone and moved out of your way, you want to unloosen your bolts for your upper and lower control. Preferably just one. So just kind of let that hang down. So now your top is free. Your bottom still has a bolt in it. Or a nut, sorry. You come through and then you slowly lower it down. And then your spring should just pop right off. Just make sure you stay out of the way just in case it decides it wants to go flying out from underneath the truck. Of course, mine's going to be a little on the stubborn side. There it goes. And then just like that, you remove your spring. You undo your bottom ball joint, bolt. And then you can remove your steering knuckle. All right, so once you got your steering knuckle out of the way, boy, that's got some slop in it. Just checking that might need to be replaced. But I'm putting all new in anyway. But once you get the knuckle out, your alignment shims, you want to count how many alignment shims are on each side. And that way, when you put it back together, you put them back in. It'll make the alignment shop guy job a whole lot easier. But the next step here is to remove this nut, remove that nut, and down at the bottom you have 2 U-bolts you'll have to undo that are mounted on the top of the frame there. So let's get to that down now. Okay, so that is the bottom and the top upper control arms removed. Obviously, that's pretty sloppy. That one's not too bad. But the next thing we need to do is my tires. Let me get they stick out quite a bit from the fender, which other side's lifted up so it doesn't look that bad here. But when it's sitting on the ground, I cannot lower this truck any more than I've got it, and I've already got it on 2-inch drop spindles. So, plan is we're going to cut this off. We're going to section this, and we're going to move both the upper and lower control arm ball joints back 1 inch. And then I also have airbags that I'm going to be putting in this because we're going to make or drop on airbags. I don't plan on dropping all the way down to the frame. I just want to drop it down enough to make it look good. So next shot, we should be in the shop modifying these control arms. See you then. Now that I have both upper and lower control arms off the truck, next what I did is I made a jig out of square tubing, some flat stock, and I made a jig so that way when we cut this, we can keep the upper and lower ball joint centered to where they had it from the factory. So once I cut this, mount it onto the jig, cut 1 inch up, then I can slide this forward and it'll stay in the position that it was from the factory. So now we just got to get the control arms cleaned up. The jig's already tightened up, so now it's saved. So now clean it up, start cutting. Alright, so now that we got this cut, now we need to remark it, but all of our markings need to be 1 inch higher than where we've cut it. That way we can get this to go up about 1 inch. It needs to be right about in that area right there. So let's get her cleaned back up, get her marked up, start cutting again. All right, to get my 1 inch offset, what I did is I took my vernier calipers and I went through, because this is still dirty and rusty, I was able to scribe exactly where I need to cut 1 inch up from my previous cut. So now what I'll do is I'll go through with a black marker and I'll mark it so I can see where I'm cutting. All right, now that we got all of our cuts made, I made some relief cuts on each side. That way we can bend the tabs in. So now all we got to do is feather the material, feather this in, probably cut this out here, that way it can be bulged out. This side doesn't look too bad. But excuse me, now we just got to go through and massage the metal to kind of make everything blend and look natural, which this is the importance of why you need a jig. That way you can get everything lined back up the way you need it to be, and it makes the alignment guy's life a whole lot easier once he needs to get in here and start realigning everything. So let's get this metal massaged and we'll start tacking it up. All right, so here it is all welded up. I need to go through with the grinder and just kind of hit all the weld spots, try to get everything as smooth as I possibly can get it. Get a few coats of paint on and obviously replace the upper ball joint. I'm going to replace all the rubber bushings in it and paint her all up and try to make it look as factory as possible, because some alignment shops won't mess with it if it's been modified. So we're going to try to make it look as factory as possible. I have yet to flip it over and weld underneath, so that I will probably do, and then we'll get back with you, and then we'll start on the lower. The lower should be easier because the top here has a lot more curves, more geometry, and everything else. So the bottom should go a lot smoother than the top. So on to the next one. All right, now that we've got the top all welded up, we went through, we welded all the bottom cuts, got all that welded up. So now what we're going to do is take our grinder, grind down all the welds, try to get everything more uniform, kind of make it look a little more factory. Then after the grinder, I'm going to take a flap disc and then just kind of blend everything to make it not look like it's been modified. That way, if I ever do get to the alignment shop, they're not going to deny the work and say they can't mess with it because it has been modified. Also, got a shipment of Moog bushings, upper lower control, or ball joints. So once this cools, it's super hot right now. It just got done welding it. We're going to take the upper control, or the upper ball joint, both of the rubber mounts, bushings out, sand it, clean it, paint it, and then we're going to move on to the lower control arm. So let's get to work. All right, now for the lower control arm, first thing you want to do, drill out the spot welds and then use your air hammer, make quick work of that, knock that off there. So I did have to modify my jig, so just drilled out that slightly bigger to accommodate the bigger ball joint on the bottom. And then on the back, I just went through and I just tack welded that to the bar. So I can just cut these off, ground that flush, and it's not going to bother anything. So next thing we got to do is figure out where we're going to cut this out, notch it, move it back, weld it in. So time for another time lapse. Okay, now that we got the front cut and separated, now we can set our vernier calipers to 1 inch. We can go through and we can scribe a line on where our next cut is going to be. Just like that. And that leaves a nice little scratch line that I can go through with my marker, so I can have an area where I can cut with the grinder. Alright, now that we got 1-inch section removed, now we can release our lock nut, lock bolt, scoot this forward, and see how we're going to line things up. So as you can see, it doesn't quite line up. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go through, you're going to have to make relief cuts and then bend the metal out to form around this and around this. And then once you get it to where the relief cuts are lined up, then you can clamp it into place, tack weld, and then once you get everything welded up, and you go through where you cut your relief cuts, and you can go through and weld through on your relief cuts, and then you can go through and grind it and just kind of mold it back into shape. Alright, so here it is with the relief cuts cut into it. So it lines up pretty decent. I will have to do some filler to get rid of some of those gaps, but everything's pretty lined up. I think once I get her welded up, we'll put enough weld in there that we can grind everything flat and flush and bring her back to factory specs. Okay, now that we got the upper and lower control arms modified, now we're going to start working on the airbag brackets themselves. First, we're going to start with the upper bracket, which is going to look like this. Has a 4-hole on the outside, and what you're going to do, take this, put it on the bottom of your perch, and you're going to take a couple of clamps, you're going to clamp it, and then you're going to mark the holes. After you mark the holes, you can remove it and then get your drill and start drilling out the 4 holes that's going to mount your upper bag bracket in place. Okay, now that we have the plate painted and the holes drilled, I also went through and drilled a hole in the side for the airline to pass through, and I also have a rubber grommet around there to protect the air hose. I had video of assembling the upper and lower control arm bushings and the ball joints, but for some reason the video got corrupted. So what I'd like to do is show you something that I 3D printed. So I designed these little spacers, these and these, and what these are for, when you go to push in your bushings, you want to put something in between here That way this doesn't collapse on you. So I designed these little 3D printed pieces that just go in. Of course, this one's going to be tight. You understand the concept. It's a little tight now because I've already put them in and got them all beat in. You're going to have to excuse the wind. It's a little windy today, and I've got the ear muff, the little dead cats, I guess they'd call that, over the microphone. So in theory, you put these in here, which I printed two because I figured one for the top, one for the bottom. But one was actually pretty more than sufficient of doing the job. So that actually worked out really well. For this one, I 3D printed little cover so that way when you get one bushing in, you get your rod put in place. You can take this. Nothing is wanting to fit now. There we go. Sorry, it's a little fidgety. But there. Once you put that in place, you just put a couple of zip ties around it, and that's going to stop your A-frame here from caving in on itself. So once you get both your bushings in, you get your nuts put on. You don't have to tighten them down yet. Then you can undo the zip tie, and these will just come right off. So now what we're going to do is start working on putting the lower control arm back into place. We also have brand new U-bolts, brand new nuts. So let's go ahead and get that installed. Now that we have the upper and lower control arms installed, next step will be working on the airbags. We need to install the airbags onto the metal plate and then install the 90-degree fitting and the airline, and then we can start bolting that up into place. All right, now we need to install the spindle, which the spindle is already a 2-inch drop spindle that I put on last year. So let's get this put on. Like I said, the biggest thing right now is just getting it put on. We don't have to tighten the capsule nuts up. So right now I just want to get it where I can raise it up to see. So the only thing I'm worried about is that the bag has this little mounting bracket, and I'm wondering if it will allow it to drop enough without completely squashing the bag. So we're going to find out. If need be, I'll just have to go through and redo the bottom control arm. I may have to cut out a pocket or something to put in there so the bag will sit more on top of the lower control arm than sitting above it where it's at now. Now we're going to come back through and modify our steering tie rod, cut a 1/2 inch off and then thread it in, probably a 1/2 inch, maybe close to an inch. We'll see when it comes to that. Like I said, for now we're just wanting to get this put on, and then now we can take it and jack it up. Make sure everything clears the airbag. Like, there we go. I was gonna say I didn't like the way that bag was looking. let's give her full squash. So right about there, I'm starting to lift the truck up. So I would say that that would drop her down pretty darn good. I may not have to modify the bottom control arm, which that makes me happy because it's less work that I have to do. I don't think I'll ever have the bags that deflated because this is actually sitting pretty low. Now, I don't know if you can see or not, but my exhaust headers actually sit below the frame. So in theory, I really shouldn't go this low. But I'm happy with that. And then I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to cut the hose, and I'm going to install a Schrader valve. That way we can at least get some air in the bag, make sure that it's not going to leak, for one, because that's going to be a real pain to get to try to figure out if it's leaking or not. And then eventually what I'd like to do is put a T in with the Schrader valve up here on the frame, just in case something were to happen, and I can block off the air line and still add air to the bag. I've ran into that once before. So what we're going to do is go ahead and cut the line to length to make sure it's going to be out of the way of the shock, and then install a Schrader valve. All right, now so what I need to do is I threw the tire back on it, and I would like to jack up from underneath the lower control arm, and jack it up with the tire on it and see how high it goes. And I'm pretty sure it will probably hit the fender. And I think one issue I may run into is there is a fender brace right here. So I may have to modify that fender brace so I'm able to get something in here and roll this fender lip out a little bit. I'd also like to get some new tires because these have a date code of 2016. That and they're mud and snow tires. So I'd like to get some better tires put on it. But let's get her jacked up, see how high she can go. So it looks like I'm almost right up in there. Yeah, I'm up into the fender now. Oh yeah. So I will definitely have to relocate this bracket, and I'm going to have to flare these fenders out a little bit. But it's a lot better than it was before I modified the upper and lower control arm. So next step when you do is take the tire off and modify the tie rod, the steering tie rod. All right, so here we are working on the driver's side, and I thought I'd get a little more detail than I did on the passenger side. So once I made the first initial cut, I went through, took my verniers, went through, scribed 1 inch, marked it with the marker, and then cut out 1 inch. And then with your jig, you move this in place, and then you'll have to go through and make relief cuts, kind of like how I did here, there, which I've got more to do. I got to cut this, cut that, move this out, just kind of conform the metal around to where it's going to need to be. And then once you get everything clamped down to where it's straight, go through, grind all that, clean it up, then you can weld it up. One thing that I wanted to stress, that you may be tempted to clean it with carburetor cleaner. Do not clean it with carburetor cleaner, because once you start welding, that off gas will make you sick. Unless you have crazy amount of ventilation, do not use carb cleaner to clean your parts before you weld them. So let's get this welded up. Don't worry about the gaps. We're going to get some filler material. The material that I cut out of here, we're going to use as filler material. So now we'll get this welded up. Okay, quite a few days later and several weather related issues. We got the front all buttoned up, or at least the driver's side buttoned up. It is currently sitting on this airbag. Get a look up underneath here. So I got the airbag in right now. You can see the line, and it's just got a little shredder valve holding it in. So I did have to modify the upper bag mount, because for some odd reason when I would lower the truck down, it would put the airbag in kind of like a weird angle, and so I did have to modify the upper bag mount for that to drop evenly. So it's not completely finished up. I still have to take it apart. I want to go ahead and replace the front wheel bearings, just because they're kind of I don't know, they're rough. They kind of skip a little bit. It probably wouldn't hurt to go ahead and just replace them. I did have to adjust the camber, which, as you can see, I took quite a bit of shims out. So this was reading well into -2 for the camber. So I got it back down to about -0.5. So I should have quite a bit of clearance going up here. What I may also have to do is go ahead and come through and bend this in. That way I know that I have plenty of room when I drop the truck down. On the other side, as you can see, for this one, it's sitting right about half to 1. So, and that is also where I had to remove a bunch of shims. Listen here, Jet. I'm trying to record a video. So we got that lined back up. So I should have plenty of clearance here. So for this side, what I want to also do, where's my bump stop? So when I lower the truck down, I don't want it sitting on the airbag itself. So what I'm going to do is make a plate that's going to bolt up here and here. It's going to stick out of the side, and I'm going to run 2 bump stops just because I can. We're going to run 1 bump stop here, flip us around, and we're going to run another bump stop right here. That way it'll have extra support on both sides. So what I'm going to do is get some CAD, some cardboard Ada design, and make up some brackets to take to work and cut out some pretty thick metal, because if you think that you'd want something pretty thick holding that in. So here's the Schrader valve. I also need to remove the bolts on this side, because after about 24 hours this side deflates. So I got to figure out if it's in that Schrader valve or if it's in the connection in the top of my airbag. I also need to finish this. I got the lock nut on the lock washer on the wrong side. So we'll get that mocked up, and the next scene you guys will see how I do the bump stops. After a few iterations, this is the design I came up with for the bump stops. I want to run 2, because when I go to a show or anywhere that I want to park and I just want to drop it, I'd rather it sit on the bump stops than sit on the airbag themselves. Of course, I'm not going to drain 100% of the air. It probably won't be at 0, but I'll get it down to where it just stops and then keep some air in the bag. I'll post a quick picture of what the setup looks like just sitting on the bump stop. And then also what I've done is I made a bump stop. Just a 1/2 inch bolt. I think it's like a 2-inch, 2.5 inch bolt. So when it comes around, it hits there. And the issue that I was having was, come on, focus. The caliper would hit my bracket and it would actually push the caliper into the rotor when you try to turn right. So that would not be ideal. So here's the setup I'm going to go with. Now we just have to transfer it over to the other side. I do have, so there's a straighter valve. Got the air line going over. Now this is just temporary. There's a T, goes down to the airbag, then that goes up into the cab. So now we just got to do the other side, get it all painted up, make it look a little bit better than that. I got some touch-ups I want to do, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now that we have all the air lines ran and the front end pretty much buttoned up, I've got a few little things to tidy up, like the tie rod. I need to get that adjusted, get the toe sorted out, need to get all these air lines mounted up. I have all the lines going up into the cab. I'll show you how I ran all of that. Also, we have the air tank, a little 3-gallon air tank, along with the dryer mounted. So we have that just running up into the cab. I have an extra Schrader valve connected to the top of the tank just in case I needed to add air to it for whatever reason. Maybe my air compressor gives out, or I can stop at a gas station and just fill that tank up and maybe get by. On the inside, now it is quite a mess in here. So I have air lines running up through the A-pillar and coming out to the top. This one is, what is this one? This one's coming from the 3-gallon tank. This one is going to the left front. That line is going to the right front, which I have connected to just a little air compressor to keep air in it. That side still wants to bleed off, so I'm going to have to take it apart, figure out where it's leaking. It takes about 2 days to bleed off, so I need to figure out where it is leaking from. So my thought process is, so I 3D printed this little gauge pod out of ASA plastic. The thought process is mounting everything up top here. That way I can easily see the gauges and I'll have access to all the switches. Then the rear airbags will go in and come up through here and then just run around the top into the back of the gauge. So what I'm working on now is the air compressor. Now this is just a cheap knockoff air compressor. Now when I bought it, it said it is rated for outdoors, but I can tell you it is not rated for outdoors. Underneath this cover, there's giant holes so you can get to the brushes. I don't know about you, but I really don't want water ingressing into there. I thought about mounting that behind the driver's seat. A, it's going to be loud. I don't want that much noise inside the cab. B, it's going to put out a lot of heat. Now, I don't anticipate in this air compressor running long because it has quite a bit of CFMs to it for a little package. I used to have a big handle, and so I just kind of went through, redid it the way that I wanted to do it. So you have 2 lines that will go to the pressure switch. You have a ground wire and then you'll have the main power wire, and there is a relay box inside this cover. So and then I'll just have everything. These will go to the pressure switch and to a toggle switch I'll have on the dash. So I found a battery box that this thing just barely fits into. So I think this will be a good candidate. The lid's over there. So the lid, since it's a battery box, it'll fit over the top, but it has little, let me get the topper and I'll show you. So the top has these little notches on the side, which the air hose should be able to easily pass through. And this, well, I got a wire hanging out, so it's not going to sit perfectly flush. That, and I've only got one hand. But that will sit on top of there. I'm going to cover these holes up. Figure out some type of ventilation, because that compressor is going to get hot, so we'll have to figure out some type of ventilation for it. So that'll be later on down the road. So once I get this all mounted up, installed, get the air line ran, get all the wires ran, we'll catch you up from there. All right, so we have the box. I cut a 2.5-inch hole, and the cylinder portion will be right here, and I'm going to put a fan that can pull air from outside in, and then the goal is to have the air, the hot air, come past this and this right here as this sits on top, just like that. So it'll vent out here and it'll vent out here. I'm gonna have a heat probe in there to see how hot it does get, and probably have the fan on a thermostat. That way it'll kick on if it gets too hot. And the one that I bought, it ramps up. The hotter it gets, the faster the fan gets. So I think that'll be good for this application. What I've also done, listen here, birds, I'm trying to record. I also put riv nuts in the bottom of the box to hold the pump down. And I'm going to use these to secure the box to the bed. What I've also done is drilled 2 holes. One hole for the wires to here, and then the other one will be for the airline. So let's get that installed. All right, so we got the box screwed down, and we got the strap screwed down with its straps. Now time to drop the air compressor in. With the air compressor installed in the bed, I got the air lines ran to the water separator, along with the electrical connections to the cutoff switch on the tank. So I got it connected to the back. Then we got some wires that will run up. Let's see if I can find it here. To the shutoff solenoid up there in the corner. And now what we need to do is run these wires up to a toggle switch. That way I can turn the air compressor on and off. All right, now we will skip ahead a few days. We've got all the tires on. We got all the plumbing ran. We got the hoses. We got all the wiring. We got the air compressor running. We've got the gauge pod installed. Truck's still a mess. So this is just kind of a, wow, echoey. This is just kind of a mock-up. I'm actually 3D printing a bigger version of this, a little bit better version. Just kind of a temporary situation to see how I like it up at the top. So right now the only thing I've obviously got is just the front airbags. So this is a dual needle setup. So right now we've got roughly 90 pounds in the air tank, and it holds. I did have quite a few leaks. The original air line that I put in, the air hose I put in, was leaking, so I had to go and buy a new rubber air line to go from the compressor to the tank. So this is for the rear that's not been done yet. So right now the front bags are holding right about 80 pounds, 90 pounds in the tank. Takes about a minute 40 to go from 0 to 100 pounds. So that's pretty good. That's pretty quick. From about 70 psi up to 100 is about 30 seconds. So quite impressed with that little air compressor. So what I can do is set my camera up on the tripod and show you guys it going up and down. There she is, sitting on the ground, or at least close to the ground that I want. Now we'll go up. Okay, so I think that will wrap up the first part of this video. That way I can go ahead and get it out. So to recap, we've narrowed the front control arms. We put air ride around all the airlines. We put the tank underneath. We mounted the air compressor in the bed. Done a lot. Honestly, it's taken me 3 months just to get to this point because of Mother Nature and just busy. In part 2, we are going to start ripping into the rear end, and this time it'll be in my garage. Got the garage finally cleaned out, so part 2 will be in the garage. We're going to do a 4-link, we're going to do airbags, and just see how low we can get this thing to go, respectively, and still make it drivable. 2 weeks ago, we were hit with an EF2 tornado. So I wanted this video out for Memorial Weekend. But unfortunately, Mother Nature had other plans. So our community was hit with an EF2 tornado, which affected a lot of counties here in Indiana. The great part about it is I watched from our back porch, watch the funnel cloud literally just go right over the top of our house. Everything on that side of the subdivision just got leveled, and then it landed on the end of the subdivision, took out the post office, and then just kept going. So we did spend quite a bit of time. I spent that whole weekend helping clean up debris. We had a bunch of debris here. Luckily, our house was unscathed, besides some minor damage. So we were all lucky. But a lot of people were not so lucky. So we did have to take time to help out. But that's a given. I mean, you're going to go and help your neighbors. So part 2, I'm going to try to get started this weekend, in the next couple of days. It will be inside the garage, so now it will actually be garage, and I will start recording those videos. So you guys know how this goes. Like, comment, subscribe. If you guys have any questions or say, hey, you did this wrong, or whatever, just put it in the comments below. Good, bad, or evil, it doesn't matter. Comment, tell me what would you do differently. You know, I've never done this before. I'm not a fabricator. I love tinkering, and so I thought this would be something that would just give me a good challenge. And boy, has it been a challenge. So thanks for watching. If you stayed tuned to this far, I really appreciate it, and let's see if I can get this channel to grow. You guys have a good one.